Today, I'm really pleased to be meeting my guest and taking you all for a trip to Brooklyn, New York, where we are going to be speaking with Claire, who is the founder of Rehab Barbie. What a killer name. And I'm so excited to hear her story and have her share her story with us. So Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! So Claire, you're joining us from Brooklyn. Where's the accent?
Yeah, I know. I don't have the thick accent because I didn't grow up here, but I'm a New Yorker at heart, I like to think.
Oh, nice. I know I was looking at your podcast guesting form and I was like, Brooklyn, New York. I've had a couple guests and I just love that accent.
Yeah.
It's just all like mobster and gangster and mafioso. And I'm like, I love it. All right, Claire. So I'm really happy that you're here joining us today. And for those of you that are listening to this podcast episode right now, you are going to hear all about Claire and Rehab Barbie, if you don't know about her already. But before we get into the Rehab Barbie, which is just fucking awesome, let's hear a little bit about Claire and your journey in recovery. Do you want to tell us, Claire, what made you think you had a problem with the way you drank or drugged?
Oh my God. I knew I had a problem when I was like 17. I mean, that's why I really am so steadfastly believe in the like genetic disease model of addiction, because I didn't have any childhood trauma, like a fairly normal upbringing. And just as soon as I started drinking, it was like problematic right off the bat, like could not stop, could not control it. Yeah. I mean,
and so was your intro to drinking at 17, or was that when you reached the problematic stage?
So I started drinking, I was around 14, 15, and it was, I mean, I reached the problematic stage right away. Really did. Of course, like it was my, I was young. It was my first time drinking. So I just thought like, oh, I like didn't know how to drink, or I wasn't used to it and I could just learn how to control it like everyone else.
Right.
And then, after trying and failing for years, and just like, it's weird because you assume that everyone else experiences drugs and alcohol the same way you do, or at least in a similar way. So I just thought that everyone had this huge internal struggle while they were drinking to like drink, but like keep yourself from blacking out and like count every drink. And like, I just thought that was what everyone did. And then, eventually I realized like, no. And so I mean, I knew pretty early on and I just wasn't ready to get sober. I was young and I went to college, and I mean, in college, I definitely knew. I studied psychology. We learned about alcohol use disorder and stuff like that. And yeah, and I knew it was in my family genetics. I just, had to get to a place where I was ready to take that step to sobriety. Yeah.
So that's interesting that you said you were, studying in college when you were like in a class and reading these textbook descriptions or descriptions of an alcoholic and an addict. Did you know at that point that was you, or were you like, oh, that's not me, when you were learning about it?
There's this, I remember there's like this list of qualifiers for someone who has alcohol use disorder. And it was like, a certain amount of drinks per week, like certain behaviors around drinking, like how many times you blacked out or how many times you feel unable to stop. Like and a certain amount of drinks per week, I blew them out of the water. Like it wasn't even like, oh, maybe I'm on the border. Like it was just
right.
like, yeah. So, I mean, once in a while I'd be like, oh, like in denial, like, no, it's not. But I mean, it was pretty hard to deny. And so I would just became okay with being like a functioning alcoholic.
Right. And I think that's very common for many alcoholics and addicts, and especially at that young age. I mean, when I grew up, that was the same way. We drank and drugged to fit in. And that was the part, like you said, everybody around me was drinking and drugging and they were partying. So why was I any different? We do think that everybody's experiencing the same things we are, but yet there's something inside that's like, knows it's different. Because I don't know about you, but like for me, I was blacking out all the time towards the last 10 years of my drinking and drugging. And something inside me made me feel ashamed of that, because that's not something I talked about with my circle of party friends, right? Did you talk about it?
Oh my God, no, it's so embarrassing. I would like be out and about. I'd be out at a party. This would happen to me all the time. I'd be like, hi, I'm Claire. And they would be like, oh yeah, we've met like 3 times. I stopped introducing myself to people because it was so embarrassing. I just pretended like I knew everyone.
Right. Oh my goodness. I can't believe you brought that up. That's bringing back flashbacks for me. I remember often running into somebody on the street and they'd be like, hey, Dora, what a good time we had last night. And I'd be like, I don't fucking know who that was. I don't know at all. So oh my goodness. So there's a part of us when we're in active addiction and alcoholism where we think everybody is just like us, but there's still that inner shame we're carrying around, that blackout, because we're not talking about it, right? So that's kind of weird how they can both coincide within us at the same time.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I know my friends I have a lot of friends who were big partiers, but they didn't, I always had a drink before bed, I would always I would drink every day. Like none of even my friends who were like really big partiers, they didn't do that. I mean, that's right. When you're alone, I was like, oh, it's to, help me relax after my grueling day at school.
Yes. I was the same, like towards the end there, I drank every day, all day, a minimum of 12 beers a day to get me started. And then I just never knew when I would take off for 3 days or whether it was just going to be 12 beers. But when I finally stopped to get some really needed sleep, like once a week, I would literally stay in. I'd be like, okay, now I'm going to eat. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I'm going to eat. I'm going to watch Netflix. I'm going to sleep. But I would have a 6-pack of beer for that rest period of 6 hours or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Which is nuts when you think about it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So did you end up having some friends or family that started pointing out to you like, hey, Claire, maybe you got a problem. Maybe you should slow down. Or did you realize that on your own?
Well, so I knew that I was drinking too much, but I knew I should slow down, but I didn't want to. I did everything I could to cut back on my drinking except abstinence, but I was always trying to drink less. But yeah, it was really my family that they were the ones that kind of put their foot down and said, you need to take care of this. And they're the ones who really pushed me to be a part of a program and work with doctors to find to help. They wanted me to try abstinence. My alcoholism runs in my family, and moderating obviously didn't work for me as much as I wanted to believe it someday would.
Right.
So my family pushed me to try that. And then when I did actually have a period of sobriety, I realized, this is fucking amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before your family started telling you you had issues and pushing you towards abstinence and getting clean and sober, did you have any like major rock bottoms that you care to share with us? Like,
well, I have a history with the law enforcement in both Canada and the United States, so I'll leave it at that.
woo!
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it got really bad, and like, especially knowing like my background, like I don't know, I you know, I'm comfortable saying like I am privileged and I have a lot of like that, and like I'm like this like little white girl, you know, like
Right.
I really had to be pissing them off to like get arrested in like the suburbs of Philadelphia where no one gets arrested. So yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, I had lots of upsetting moments and physical like health issues, like hit my tooth, like all of that, legal repercussions, and just like, you know, drinking too much at inappropriate times, like family events, or like, I mean, it was at the point where before my exams, I remember this, I would always have at least like 3 shots before I went and took my exams.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, I think it could have gotten a lot worse because I wouldn't have gotten sober at that point if my family hadn't stepped in. So I think, you know, there is another rock bottom I could have hit, but like, I'm good, you know, I'm
Right.
I'm glad I didn't have to.
Well, it sounds like you really realized this at quite a young age. Like you're a young woman now. At what age were you when you started your sobriety?
24.
That's like, you still have a lifetime ahead of you, and that's incredible. I applaud you for that. You know, my journey started at 44 and I was like, man, like my life's over, right? But now I've come to the point like, no, I've still got a good chunk of life yet to turn it around, you know, but you've got a whole life ahead of you. And that is relatively a young age to realize that and take the bull by the horns and do something about it. So I'm really happy for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I definitely got lucky, and I owe a lot to my family to getting sober so young, but that is a lot about like the conceptualizing Rehab Barbie, and the whole message behind our brand is like, I want to make sobriety seem like cool and appealing, and there's not like an age cap on it, you know, it's not something you have to do when you're older. It's awesome to do it younger if you can.
Right. So when your family or your parents pushed you into and highly suggested that you get clean and sober, and you said like you started the journey and then you fell in love with it. So did you have any relapses along the way, or did you get into it and just be like, yeah, I need to do this?
Well, no relapses, but the beginning was horrible. I mean, like when I first started, it wasn't great at all. It was a fucking nightmare. I had terrible cravings, like just didn't feel good. I was miserable. Early sobriety is really, really difficult, and I had a really difficult experience, but I just, at that point, you know, I went with the whole like one day at a time, and was like, I want to try this. I want to give sobriety a try. I really did want to give it a try. So it was like, you know, I can't give it a try for 2 weeks. I got to do at least 6 months and like see what that experience was. And then even at 6 months, I was like, I'm going to be sober for a year and then like reevaluate. And now we're at 3 years. So so far so good. But yeah, no, the beginning was not fun. It took a while for me to feel comfortable and really start seeing like the rewards in my life of this new style.
I think this is a good time to maybe see, what would you suggest to somebody that might be listening right now that's on the fence or just starting their journey in recovery? If you could go back now with the experience that you have at 3 years sober, like what would be some tips you'd give on that beginning stages of recovery that are so difficult?
Yeah. The beginning's hard. I definitely, I would say, I mean, this mindset really worked for me, to consider it like a trial period. I think there's a lot of pressure in some parts of the sober community to be like, no, you have to commit to never drinking again. But I think that's really, really hard to do. And especially, you know, when I was 24, I didn't want to be like, I mean, I'm never going to drink again. Like,
Right.
It's a big decision to make for the rest of your life. So just, you know, say, I'm not going to drink for 6 months. I'm not going to drink for a year, and see how that plays out, see how you feel, and then reevaluate. And that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think, at least for me, when there's no question, like I was like, I'll compare my life drinking to my life drinking. And the comparison is just off the charts better.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for that advice. Yeah, early recovery. It was also so difficult for me. I drank and drugged for 30 years, and so much of it was habitual, you know, like I would just walk into a store and find myself in front of the beer cooler, like with the door open out of habit, and then catch myself, like, you know, a couple months into the sobriety and be like, oh, I don't drink. What am I going to get in the store here if I'm not getting that a cooler or a beer? Like, what do you drink? You know, like just have it, but just cunning, baffling, and powerful is what it is. You know, it just takes us off guard sometimes. And that early recovery can be very tricky. And the way that you wrapped it all up there about, you know, giving yourself a trial period, I think for me, one day at a time, that really relates to that too, you know, like especially in early recovery, like it's impossible to imagine, you know, what's going to happen at New Year's, or what's going to happen if I get married, or if I go to a wedding, or like the only way an alcoholic or addict like me can do it is one day at a time. Like you can wake up today and say, I'm not going to drink and I'm not going to drug today. And that is a lot easier to handle. And then if that worked out, do the same thing again tomorrow. I'm not going to drink and drug today. But like you said, a smaller goal, 6 months, a year, or whatever, and reevaluate. I love that, because nobody knows what's going to happen in years. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Like all we can do is take off little bites and pieces at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Aww. Okay, Claire. So you were getting clean and sober at a very young age. How was your friend circle at that time? Like, did you tell your friends like, oh, I'm not going to drink for 6 months, or did you just stop hanging out with them, or how was that received from your friends?
You know, my friends have been really, really supportive. You know, people are like, yeah, my close friends have been so supportive, and they just want what's best for me. And, you know, I don't have friends who are like weird about it. Like, I think, and even if, you know, I think it's kind of the way we're headed now. Like people are more accepting of sobriety, whether it's, you know, from the standpoint is I'm an alcoholic and that's why I'm sober, or just like people like to like do a sober October, take a break from drinking. Everyone was very supportive, and like I'm a way better friend now. I just like I'm not causing chaos and like throwing up everywhere, you know? Like, so I think people are pretty happy about it.
I love that. And for those of you that are listening, Claire had some good friends to support her. If you are at the beginning of your recovery journey and you have friends that aren't supporting you, I would encourage you to find a new friend circle, especially in the beginning of recovery, and find people that will support your sober lifestyle, because that's huge. But it sounds like you had great friends, so that's fantastic. And I think you're right, Claire. I think that in today's day and age, there's definitely a lot more awareness and talk about addiction and mental health, and it is more acceptable to say, I'm not drinking, I'm not drugging. Whereas like when I grew up, it was like, if you didn't drink or you didn't drug, people wanted to know what was wrong with you, and they didn't trust you, and why not? And, you know, are you sick? Are you dying? Are you? There was like no gray area, right? So I think you're right. Now I think it is definitely more in the mainstream. We're fighting the stigma. We're raising awareness around all these issues, and it is more out in the open, which means it's more acceptable because we are talking about it. We're not throwing it under the carpet.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I think there still is a ways to go, and I will once in a while get someone who acts like very weird about it and like is really concerned with my sobriety. And just like why, like, you know, but I think in general, yeah, people are much more understanding, and it is because we are being, you know, vocal about it and sharing.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Fabulous. Well, I love that you started at such a young age, and you have family encouraging you, and you have a very good friends circle that were accepting of your journey. And like you said, you weren't causing chaos and vomiting all over the place. That's awesome. Okay, well, I would love to know then, how did Rehab Barbie come about? I'd love to know a little bit of the backstory on that, what it is, if it's something you had experience with before you got clean and sober, or how did Rehab Barbie come about? Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So I've always worked in fashion, more on like the marketing communication side, and that's always been like a huge passion of mine. And one of my like main interests. So I had that background. And then when I got sober, I did have like all this energy and free time, and I wanted to put it into something. And this was also like when I first got sober, it was like right around when COVID started. So I had like lots of free time.
Right.
And I've always been, you know, kind of artistic, like just for fun. I'll design stuff, draw stuff, do like graphic designs. So I started doing that, and then I found that I could like get t-shirts custom printed with stuff on them. So I started ordering them just for me to wear. And so that's how that kind of sprung about. And then same with the bracelets. I was just like making bracelets for fun. I was actually, my friend and I went to a rave for my birthday last year. So I was making
awesome
bracelets. Yeah. And then I just got like really into it, as I do with everything I like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I made so many bracelets and all these t-shirts. And then out of that kind of came the idea of like building into a full-fledged brand. And like merging that with my story of addiction recovery, and like, because I feel like there are some sober apparel brands, but there's not like such a strong voice for like cool fashion that's also like sober friendly and mental health friendly. Like I feel like that is something that's needed, and for people who are embracing that lifestyle to have like an aesthetic and cool pieces to wear that also speak to that journey. And because my story and my struggles are a lot of what I draw inspiration from my art, and like inspired me to even start this whole thing, it just seemed like the perfect fit and the perfect way to, you know, craft that brand. Rehab Barbie, the name, my friend who's also in recovery, we were talking about Barbie, like Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
And, Barbie it's supposed to be like this aspirational woman and like that you can look up to, and they are trying to be more inclusive, right? So they have like a cancer survivor Barbie and a Barbie in a wheelchair to like show the aspirational model of women who've gone through different struggles, and that can be like an icon too. We were like, well, that's great, but where the fuck is Rehab Barbie? Where is what? It just comes back to that idea that like addiction and addiction recovery is stigmatized, and it's like you shouldn't tell people you are in recovery or that you go to therapy or that you went to rehab, like that you're supposed to be like quiet and like a little ashamed of that. But no, that's so backwards. Like every other disease, it's like you're a cancer survivor, like, or you're so brave, you're going through these treatments. Like it's the same with addiction and mental health. It's like you're taking care of yourself, you're going to the doctor to get a disease treated, and you're battling a deadly illness. So that should be celebrated. And Rehab Barbie is a fucking icon. Like she got sober, and that's amazing.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for encapsulating that so beautifully. I love the vision. And so you and your girlfriend were talking like, where the fuck's Rehab Barbie? And then right away were you like, that's going to be our name. We're going to start designing stuff. Let's do it now.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just like loved the name and concept of Rehab Barbie. I just thought it was really funny. And then when I was trying to think of a name for my brand, I was like, oh, perfect.
We already have one. Oh, I love it. I love that name. And I love your website for anybody that wants to check out Claire's website. Check it out at www.rehabbarbie.com, right? Yeah. Check it out. She's got some amazing clothes up there, and her and I, Rehab Barbie and Soberoso, are going to get together and collab on a piece, on a design. And I can't wait to see what that looks like and to share it with all of you. Yay. I'm so excited. All right, Claire. Well, before we head towards the end of this show, there's a couple things I'd love to talk to you about. One of them is, you briefly brought it up, but I would like to know a little bit, let's talk a little bit about the stigmas of addiction and mental health. I would love it if you would tell me what you think the stigmas are and how we can help tear down those stigmas.
Yeah, I mean, the stigma surrounding addiction and mental health is crazy. I think it's because like people can't necessarily see the way you can see with a physical ailment. If someone has a broken arm, like you see that their arm is broken. But if you have something in your brain where a neuron's not functioning right, or one of your brain circuits, or the way in addiction it's the malfunction in the reward system and the prefrontal cortex. Like it's a medical issue with an organ of the brain, just the way heart disease, it's the heart's malfunctioning, or your liver's malfunctioning. The addiction and mental health, there's a malfunction in the brain. We can't see our brains, but it's there. And doctors who do brain mapping, they see that. So people don't necessarily, they don't always believe that it's real. They think, it's a willpower thing, or, if you're depressed, it's like, oh, just cheer up, so there's that stigma that you should be able to fix this problem on your own, or that you're somehow causing this issue yourself, and that it doesn't deserve the same medical attention and the same consideration that other illnesses get. If you had a broken arm, or you had any type of other, if you had, God forbid, cancer, you would of course go to a doctor, like duh.
Mhm.
Like everyone will tell you you would never be like, oh yeah, I think I can beat it on my own.
Right.
And if anybody asked, you wouldn't feel like, oh, I don't want people to know I'm that, I have a cast on my broken arm. Like it
Right.
feels like, there's just not that same like weird like shame and like I should keep this hidden that you have with anything else, but people aren't like, oh my God, I'm going to rehab.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, oh, good for you. Yeah, it's just different. But it shouldn't be, because you're treating it's a medical problem. And I think that's really a big hurdle when it comes to addiction and mental health recovery. So I think it's a big problem, and now, people are starting to be more open about it and share their story. And there needs to be more, but there is some research into the different causes of addiction and what exactly is happening in the brain, and brain scans and cures and stuff like that. So I think that education and that like speaking out on the issue and personal experiences is the only way we're going to really make moves towards breaking that stigma.
Beautiful. Beautifully put. Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. And I think also the stigmas around addiction and mental health are kind of like what you said. It's this, not only do people that are suffering with addiction and mental health issues feel ashamed to talk about it, but this stigma is kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it. Like if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. And to remove that stigma, we're going to do what you and I are doing. We're sharing our stories publicly. We're sharing our stories out loud. We're sharing it to the masses, whether it's through designing clothing that makes you think and rethink about sobriety and bring it into the light and recovery and mental health. But I think, there has definitely been a move and a bigger movement to people that are coming forward and speaking about this. And if that's you, I applaud you and thank you for all that you're doing. But the only way that we can help fight this stigma even more is to get more people and to get louder. And like you said, where the fuck's Rehab Barbie? I mean,
yes, yeah,
wear it, share it, speak it, go into a school and share your story. Do whatever you can to talk about it. The more we talk about it, the more we're normalizing it. And that is lightening and removing that stigma, because if we're talking about it, it's there, it's not going away. And that's one way we can work towards tearing down and saying, like you say, Claire, hashtag fuck the stigma.
Fuck the stigma. Yes.
Awesome. Love it. All right. So before we get to the end here, I would also like to know, in your personal recovery journey, Claire, what is one or some of the gifts you have found in your recovery and in your sobriety journey?
Oh my gosh. So many. I feel like I'm really reaching my full potential, just as a person. And it makes me emotional sometimes. Like I'm really like doing things that I only dreamed of before, like starting a clothing brand. That's fucking crazy, dude. Like that's like, I've always wanted to do something like that. And like the fact that I'm actually doing it now, like I'm like, is this real?
Right.
So that's really amazing. I feel like right now I feel like I can do anything. Like there's so many possibilities out there, and if I want to like give something a try, I do it, which is crazy. I started like skydiving.
Wow.
Yeah, I got I was terrifying and I was horrible at it because I had a panic attack every single time.
I could not do that.
But I got my license, like just like crazy shit like
that.
But before, I would never have like trusted myself to do that.
So that's beautiful. One of your gifts is living into your potential. And that is something that when we're drinking and drugging is ripped out from underneath of us. Nobody's living in the potential when they're in a blackout or hungover.
And it just takes so much energy to balance like regular life stuff, like school or work or whatever, and also like handling it, having an addiction. Like it takes a lot of bucket energy to do everything, like hungover and like find everything the next morning, and just like
sure does. Well, Claire, I would like to thank you so much for being part of the podcast today and joining us and sharing our passion for recovery. If you have enjoyed this episode and you are not following Rehab Barbie yet, please check Claire out on Instagram and TikTok at Rehab Barbie Studio. Check her out, check her pieces out, and wait for our collaboration on a design coming to you real soon.
Yes, definitely check us out. I love to hear from, anyone. So reach out to us on social media or online. And yes, our collab is going to be super, super cool. I'm very, very excited.
Woohoo! All right, folks, thank you for being here today. And until the next time, stay safe, stay sober, and to thine own self be true.